Muse Music Store and Mahaska County Conservation Board presents Eveland Access Summerfest Music by the River 2024. June 1st from noon to 10 p.m. featuring 8 musical artists with live music, activities like bingo, sand volleyball, and cornhole, food, and much, much more. It's a free event at the Eveland Access Campgrounds at 2890 Galveston Avenue, Oskaloosa. Bring a friend and have a lot of fun at the Eveland Access Summerfest 2024 Music by the River, June 1st from noon to 10 at the Eveland Access Campgrounds.
And now, your hosts of the Card Subject to Change podcast, the For Frequency's Sake Tag Team Champions of the World, the Wizard CZ, and Never Wrong Nick Bull.
Bonjour, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Card Subject to Change podcast, episode 119. Carte Sujac à Changement presents Backlash. Oui. I promise you that probably all the French I speak this episode. It's been a few years since I've had a French course, but I can speak un peu French. That means a little French. So for our audience out there that appreciates my French speaking, there you go. That's about all you're going to get this episode. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Never Wrong Nick Bull. Joining me is my tag team partner, co-champ of the For Frequency's Sake Network. Of course, we couldn't do this show without the Wizard CZ. Wiz, how you doing?
I'm doing real good. I am not exhausted anymore. Little tired, but I hit a wall yesterday. Otherwise, we would have been doing this show last night.
We apologize to our listeners who were depending on us for last night's show. We both hit the wall. It was a big day at the Sander Lee Memorial Car Show out of the Rock Island County Fairgrounds. We had such a great time with that, interviewing wrestlers out there, interacting with the wrestlers. We will have another show coming up with all of that stuff that we had from there. But CZ's day started way earlier than most of ours did yesterday. CZ had his hands full. He had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity yesterday to go to the airport and pick up a WWE Hall of Famer and then get them back here for the car show yesterday. CZ, talk about how that went down and pretty much the reason why you hit the wall yesterday. You were up pretty much all day yesterday.
Almost literally all day. I went to bed Friday night about 7 o'clock and was up by midnight. Not by choice. Well, by choice, but midnight, not by choice. I would have preferred to get another hour of sleep, but I just couldn't fall back asleep because I was just that buzzed for what was going on. We talked about the Sandra Lee Memorial Car Show, the 3rd annual. Ricky Lee messaged me, or we were talking back and forth, knowing we were going to be out there Saturday, Friday afternoon. The one and only Godfather was going to be stuck at the Chicago airport for 4 hours from 5 a.m. until 9 a.m. Would not get into town until 2 to 3 hours after the car show started. But we had a solution. Ricky Lee was like, man, I can't make it out to pick him up while getting the show together, and said, Hey, Wizard, would you like to spend your night driving to Chicago and back to pick up the Godfather from O'Hare Airport? And I sat there and I'm like, do I want to lose sleep to have a 2.5-hour car ride with a WWE Hall of Famer? That lasted a half a second. Of course the answer is yes. Of course the answer is yes. How often how many people can say that they've had a 2.5 hour car ride with a legend in the business, a WWE Hall of Famer who has brought joy or in his earlier days fear to many of the wrestling faithful, including one never wrong Nick Bull on the fear side of things.
Absolutely scared the crap out of me as a kid as Papa Shango, but you had the chance to pick up the Godfather, also known as Charles Wright, real name Charles Wright, but played such gimmicks as Kama Mustafa, Papa Shango, the Good Father, the Godfather, among others, and did what was a stand-up guy yesterday when we talked to him. Talk about your guys' car ride back. I know he probably slept some since it was such a late flight, but you had to have some interaction with the Godfather. And look at it this way, CZ. I know there probably weren't any hoes on the hoe train, but you were essentially driving the hoe train.
You had to find a way to sneak that in, didn't you? So, oh my, we're already off the rails, and it's not even. No, it was. I got to the airport. I was about a half hour before his flight landed, so I just kind of chilled there. Ricky called me about 5:30 and said, "Hey, are you at the airport?" I'm like, "Absolutely, I am." Well, give the Godfather a call because he's there and he's not sure where he needs to go. So I called him. I'm like, I called him. I addressed him by his proper name. I said, "Charles, I'm waiting outside. I'm on Terminal 1, and this is the gate I'm sitting at. But if that's not where you're at, I will come to you." So I drove up a little bit to where he was, helped him get his bags in the car, and we went from there. The trip was quiet for an extent. He didn't really sleep. He was just kind of taking everything in. He said he slept on the car ride, but
on the plane ride.
The plane ride, yes.
Yep.
Sorry. The moments of conversation, he's a class act. He was very thankful and appreciative. And I told him I'm humbled here because my whole year, I don't think there's going to be anything to top that in 2024. If there is, I can't imagine what it would be. But out of respect to the Godfather, I'm not going to share the exact stories, but I'll kind of touch on some of the highlights. He was very fascinated about the farmlands as we were driving through Illinois. I mean, Illinois, Nebraska, Iowa, it's pretty much a boring drive, especially going down I-88 in Illinois. You're just barely any stops, bunch of cornfields, but he was fascinated by the silos, and I tried to tell him everything I could. I don't know much about how that works, but pretty sure they load the grain in up top, and it's a storage container, and he's very fascinated. He said he was going to look that up. Excuse me.
Now, granted, this is a guy coming from Las Vegas, so the hustle and bustle of the big city he's used to, but not seeing the rural part of America, other than probably going out to these wrestling shows, is when he gets a chance to see it. So he got a quick tour on 88, man, and 88 such a boring drive, man. That is such a boring drive, but you had a Hall of Famer in the car with you, and that's one thing. Hey, little did you know how many places this podcast was going to take you, right?
Right. I can't believe I'm just beside myself. I loved that entire experience. We talked about what he does now. Doesn't really follow the wrestling business anymore, and I can understand that. He said, once I retired, I was out, and I totally get that. But we did get to talk a little bit of wrestling, talked about shitty gimmicks and the potential of leaving the spotlight because of said shitty gimmicks. I'm not going to name what they are. I'm sure if you're a wrestling fan, you could probably guess. But just a great all-around guy. Very nice to talk to. Stopped and got some coffee at about the halfway point because he's like, I need some coffee so that I can stay up. I understand. Happy to stop. I gotta do the bathroom moves anyway. So it was a win-win for both of us.
Yeah, later on, you'll definitely see. He took some time out of his busy day yesterday and spoke with the Card Subject to Change, spoke with us yesterday out at the car show, and just a stand-up guy. Looks great. Still looks like he could go in the ring after all these years. Looks in great shape and in great spirits, and was gracious enough to spend some time with us as well. So we're very appreciative of that. That will be coming in a later episode that we record later on, but it will be available to you very soon. We promise you that.
Stay tuned to socials. You'll see it pop up very soon. But we're not here to talk about the car show on this episode because yesterday had a lot going on.
It did,
at least in our world.
It absolutely did. After the car show, the Backlash show started over in Lyon, France, at noon our time, and we all made a promise to ourselves, hey, we're going to stay off the phone. It was you, myself, and our production assistant, Dirty Don Feldman, was helping out yesterday with our interviews, and we all made an agreement to stay off our phones. We didn't want to see any spoilers, but one thing we had heard through our friends and messages and stuff is how awesome the crowd was in France, and I think that may be the understatement of the year. This may have been the greatest crowd of a WWE pay-per-view that I can ever remember. They were non-stop. I got goosebumps just sitting here thinking about the chants, the cheers, just how involved the crowd was with that show yesterday. And albeit it was a 5-match card, which doesn't bother us one bit. That just means less for us to review. But I think it gives more time for the matches to breathe, more time for the matches to have their story, to get everything ironed out. And the crowd was behind it 100% from the get-go. And I cannot say enough about the French crowd. The French showed out. The crowd was amazing. Their chants, their cheers, their involvement. I think it just raised everything another level when you consider this whole show talking about Backlash here from France.
The last time the crowd was this hot, in my opinion, was also a Backlash. Was it last year or 2 years ago that the Puerto Rico show?
Puerto Rico was last year, and we thought, wow, this crowd can't be touched. But yesterday, I think France knocked it out of the ballpark. I think that French crowd sits high atop the mountain of best crowds at a pay-per-view that I can remember, maybe of all time. They were phenomenal, CZ.
Oh, amazing. And the only sad part is neither one of us really are fluent in French, so half the time I didn't know what the hell they were saying. But that doesn't matter because the energy they shared with everyone across the world for WWE being in their country. Kudos to you, Lyon, France. Brilliant.
And the energy started on SmackDown the night before. I know you weren't able to see SmackDown since you had an early call to go pick up the Godfather at the airport in Chicago, but the crowd was into it on SmackDown, and I was thinking to myself, if the crowd is half as good as this tomorrow, meaning on the day of Backlash, this pay-per-view is going to be great. And they surpassed it. They were unbelievable. And they really laid it all on line in that first match. The first match of the show, we get KO and Randy Orton against Solo Sikoa and Tama Tonga. A ballyhoo ensued at the beginning of the match. Guys jumped each other. They're beating the crap out of each other. They're beating the crap out of security. They're beating the crap out of the referees. When Nick Aldis, the SmackDown general manager, comes out, makes an announcement for them to all stop and says, hey, if this is what you want, great. This is now a street fight, to which the crowd approved, went nuts, and the action just picked up from there.
Oh man, this was hard hitting and brutal and just all over the place. But I think this was a great match, a great introduction to Tama Tonga. This was his first official in-ring match with WWE, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is.
Brilliant way for him to enter into his in-ring work. I thought this match was really well put together, and you had to know that something was coming at the end when Nick Aldis made it a street fight. You had to know.
Had to know something was happening. Everybody figured some shenanigans were going to happen. If you look for deeper storytelling, SmackDown ended with these four guys beating the crap out of each other backstage. Show picks up these four guys beating the crap out of each other all over the place. But with the street fight, you knew something was going to happen. A lot of people believed another member of the Bloodline was going to debut, but I think a lot of people thought it was somebody else that was going to debut. It's been rumored that Jacob Fatu has signed with WWE. And if you watch Backlash yesterday, you find out that Jacob Fatu was not the member of the Bloodline that interfered, that debuted, that helped the Bloodline secure the win. It was not Jacob Fatu. Instead, it was Tonga Loa, Tama Tonga's real-life brother, son of Haku, that debuted, made the save, and ensured that the Bloodline would beat Randy Orton and KO yesterday.